It began on an ordinary night, the kind where the world outside is hushed and still, wrapped in that strange quiet that only comes after midnight. The city noises had died down. The hallway was silent, and my apartment was dimly lit by the warm, yellow glow of a street lamp filtering through the blinds. I had been tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep, the kind of restlessness that makes every sound seem amplified. The refrigerator's hum, the tick of the wall clock, the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. Nothing felt out of place until I heard a dot at first. I thought it was my imagination, a soft whisper, barely audible, floating in from the wall that separated my bedroom from apartment 3B. It wasn't a moan or an accidental noise. It was deliberate, intentional. A voice low and unmistakably human. I held my breath, waiting to hear it again. Nothing. I laughed nervously, brushing it off as the building settling, or maybe even a neighbor talking through thin walls. But then it came again, clearer this time, more direct. Ellie. It said my name. I sat up in bed instantly, heart racing. The whisper had been too real, too close, as if someone was standing just beyond the wall, mere inches away. I stared at the wall in the darkness, waiting, listening. I told myself it could have been the pipes, maybe someone in another unit watching TV. But deep down, I knew better. There had been no static, no buildup, no muffled background, just a voice.com and intimate calling to me like it knew me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My eyes were fixed on that blank stretch of wall, like it might open up and reveal someone watching me from the other side. After what felt like an eternity, I got out of bed and pressed my ear against it, listening for any sign of life in apartment 3B. Silence, not even the sound of footsteps or movement, just a stillness that made the building feel abandoned, hollow. But something about that silence felt wrong, too perfect, too complete, like it was hiding something beneath it. Then I heard the whisper again. This time, it wasn't calling my name. It was saying something else, softer, harder to understand, as though it knew I was listening closely. The next morning, I went downstairs to speak with Mrs. Klein, the elderly woman who had lived in the building for over 30 years. She spent most of her days sitting on the bench outside the mailroom, watching the world pass by with tired eyes and a cigarette dangling from her fingers. I approached her cautiously, unsure how to phrase the question. She looked up before I said anything, as if she already knew why I was there. I asked her if anyone had moved into apartment 3B recently. Her expression hardened instantly. She shook her head slowly, the cigarette trembling slightly in her hand. No one's lived there for years, she said. That place should have been sealed up for good. Her tone unsettled me. Like there was more. She wasn't saying when I asked why. She only muttered something about the family who used to live there leaving in the middle of the night. No notice, no warning, just gone. No one in the building ever saw them again. It was like they vanished. According to her, the apartment had sat untouched ever since. I returned to my floor, pausing at the door to 3B. The number on the door was scratched and crooked, and a faint red stain marked the baseboard below the peephole. The doorknob was coated with dust, but I noticed something strange, drag marks on the floor, like someone had moved something heavy recently. A few deep scratches trailed from the door across the hall toward the stairwell. I stared at them for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. If no one lived there, then why did it feel like someone was always just on the other side of the wall? And why had someone spoken my name from a place that had supposedly been emptied for so long? That night, I stayed up late again, half out of fear and half out of an obsessive need to understand what was happening. I kept the lights off and sat in silence, waiting for anything to confirm that I hadn't imagined the voice. Hours passed, and just when I began to drift off, there it was. The whisper, but this time, it wasn't coming from behind the wall. It was closer, too close. My eyes snapped open and scanned the room. The voice spoke again, and I realized with rising dread that it wasn't coming from apartment 3B anymore. It was inside my apartment. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding in my ears. Nothing. The room looked the same, my desk by the window, the chair in the corner, the closed bedroom door. But everything felt different, heavier, like the air itself had thickened. I couldn't explain it, but I knew I was being watched. I could feel eyes on me, studying me, waiting. The voice didn't say my name this time. It said something else, something too low to understand, but filled with intent. I didn't dare speak. I just sat there frozen in place. For the next hour, I heard it again and again, always from a different spot. Once from behind the couch, then near the hallway. Once, it felt like it came from directly behind me, close enough to feel the breath on my neck. I spun around each time, expecting to see someone standing there, but the room remained empty. My phone battery was dead. The clocks had all stopped at the same time. Every reflective surface in the apartment windows, mirrors, even the black screen of the TV seemed off. Like they were showing something just slightly different than reality. I couldn't shake the feeling that something in my apartment was watching me, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. I began noticing things out of place, small objects shifting positions. Doors I had closed found slightly ajar, my curtains swaying even though the windows were locked. But the worst discovery came the day I found the photos. I was cleaning near the heater vent in the living room when I noticed a loose panel in the baseboard. Curiosity overrode caution. I pried it open and pulled out a small, dusty box wedged tightly behind the wall. Inside were dozens of Polaroid pictures, old and curling at the edges. Most were too faded to make out, but a few were clear enough. My stomach twisted as I realized they were all taken from inside my apartment. Shots of my bedroom, my kitchen, even the bathroom. And then I saw one that made me stagger back. It was a photo of me sleeping. The angle was taken from above, as if someone had been standing over me while I slept. My hair was sprawled across the pillow, mouth slightly open, completely unaware of the presence just inches away. I checked every inch of my place, looking for a hidden camera or some sign of a break-in, but there was nothing. All doors and windows were locked. No signs of forced entry. Still, someone had been inside. More than once. The knowledge sent chills down my spine. I went to confront the landlord, demanding to know who else had access to my unit. He seemed genuinely confused and insisted he was the only one with keys besides me. When I mentioned the photos, his face paled and he muttered that something like this had happened before a long time ago in the same apartment. The final straw came the night I found the door to my apartment wide open at 3:14 a.m. I knew I had locked it. I always did, still half asleep. I stepped cautiously into the hallway, heart racing, every shadow looking deeper than it should. Apartment 3B's door stood slightly ajar, the first time I had ever seen it not fully shut. A cold draft moved through the hall, and for a moment I couldn't tell if it was coming from inside my apartment or from 3B. I backed away slowly and locked my door again. Placing a chair under the handle for good measure, I returned to bed, clutching my phone and watching the entrance from across the room. That's when I noticed the envelope. It had been slipped under my door. I hadn't heard it. It was old, yellowing, with no markings except a single photograph inside. Another Polaroid. This time, I was standing at the foot of my bed's wide open, mouth slightly agape. My hands hung limply at my sides as if I had been in some sort of trance. But I didn't remember standing there. I didn't remember that moment at all. Behind me in the image, the door to apartment 3B was visible, slightly open, with a pale face just barely peeking out from the darkness beyond. I dropped the photo and stared at the door again. It was closed now, completely shut, as if it had never moved. That's when I realized it wasn't just about the voice or the photos or the creeping sensation of being watched. Something had crossed the threshold. Something from apartment 3B wasn't contained to that space anymore. Whatever had been whispering to me through the walls had found a way in.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.